and we will post it on our website later today or on next week, early next week. So hello and welcome. We are excited to have you here for the Rising Sophomore Room Selection Information Session. Every fall, we welcome a new first-year class to campus, and every spring, we guide you, our rising sophomores, through the room selection process. Since you'll navigate this process every year, if you choose to stay in Columbia Housing, we want to make sure you feel confident and prepared. You'll navigate this process each year, and we've put together a comprehensive presentation to walk you through the key details. If any questions come up along the way, don't worry. We've set some time at the end of the presentation to address the questions. So let's get started. So Manly, John, Mia, Justin, and I are excited to share how the room selection process works with all of you. But before we dive into the details, we would like to take a quick poll and see how you feel about room selection. So let me just get that started. So how do you feel right now about room selection? So we have about 109 attendees right now, and let's see. Okay, so about 50 of you are okay. I've heard about it, but I need more info. 28 of you are really confused, and 13 of you are pretty good, and one is basically a pro. I wonder who that one is, but we'll see. We're gonna end it now and move on. We'll take another one. Oh, we can share the results. There you go. So before we start, let's look at today's agenda. We'll start by defining what room selection is and highlighting key dates you need to keep in mind. Throughout the presentation, we'll emphasize the most important details to help you stay on track. And don't worry, we'll keep things concise. And this session won't run longer than 30 minutes. Next, we'll walk through the registration and room selection process step by step, sharing useful tips and to help you plan effectively. We'll also review data from previous years and discuss selection strategies to help you make informed decisions. Towards the end, we'll highlight what is new for the academic 25-26 room selection process, though we know that this entire process is new for you. And finally, we'll open the floor for any questions you may have. And now I'm going to pass it on to John.
Thank you, Lorena. Welcome, everybody. So what is room selection? Essentially, room selection is the annual process where rising sophomore, juniors, and seniors have the opportunity to select their housing assignment. So unlike your first year when you applied for housing or assigned a room, next academic year, you or your designated group leader will be able to decide where you will live. So yes, you will choose your room. So how does this happen? First, you must register for room selection. Second, you or your group leader will have the opportunity to choose a room. Please keep in mind that if you're part of a pre-assigned population, such as RAs, residents of an SIC, FSL, or have a disability accommodation, you will not be able to select a room. Instead, your room assignment is predetermined. Remember that your one-stop shop for registration and room selection is online in the housing portal. So let's talk about some important dates to remember. Between February 20th and 21st, all pre-assigned students, such as RAs, residents of an SIC, FSL, or those with a disability accommodation, will have the opportunity to register. Between February 24th and March 7th, registration for room selection is open to the rest of the population. Then on February 28th, there'll be a group selection and strategy info session. Then on March 14th, demo mode opens in the selection portal, which we'll explain a bit more later. On March 25th, lottery numbers will be posted on the housing portal. On March 27th, appointment times will be posted on the housing portal. And then between April 1st and 24th, room selection begins. Please keep in mind that seniors and juniors will pick first, and your appointment times will fall on the later dates of the room selection period. Now I'm going to pass it along to my colleague Mia, who will take us through a deep dive of understanding the registration portion of the room selection process.
Thanks, Sean. So there are two housing declaration and registration periods for students. A small portion of the population will declare first, and the larger population will declare the following week. So the first period is really reserved for students who already have assignments. So these are RAs that Residential Life selects, those who have applied to live in special interest communities, students living in fraternity and sorority housing, and finally, students who have disability accommodations. So these students already have their assignments. Although these groups will already have their assignments, registration is still required, and registration for these groups will be February 20th and 21st. For these groups, registration will be from the beginning of the application at the statement of intent all the way through the occupancy agreement confirming your housing assignment. So this slide just reiterates that even for this population, if you don't register, you could lose your guaranteed housing. So majority of the population will be registering for room selection starting on February 24th. Registration will close on March 7th. So students have 2 weeks to register, and again, this is required. Some students may already know, however, that they'll be living off campus or taking some type of leave of absence. So although you won't be living on campus, your registration is still required, and you can indicate that in your intent in your registration. So registration is completed once you sign the statement of intent. And if we didn't say it enough already, if you don't declare your intent, you can lose your guaranteed housing. So now we're going to go over pre-registration planning and preparation. So you can register for room selection as an individual or as part of a group. For rising sophomores, of course, it's highly recommended to form as part of a group. So group formation occurs during the registration process. One student will create the group with a group name and password and share it with the rest of the group. Other students join the group upon registering. So once all group members have joined, the group leader selected must verify the group. If a group is unverified, it will not be able to go through the room selection process as a part of a group. So it's important that group names also remain appropriate and don't contain any special characters so that our system is able to process it for room selection. So for group formations, you may choose to form a group with a student from a different class standing as well. That's a mixed point group. So many students want to know whether they should form a group. Well, being part of a group gives you more options. If you are an individual, you cannot select into a suite like a group can. With options, though, there are some guidelines. So groups must fill the suite to capacity. So if you're a group of 4, for example, you cannot select into a suite with 5 spaces. Groups can split across rooms, floors, and even buildings if they want to. For example, if you're a group of 10, you can select into 5 double rooms or maybe 10 corridor singles if they're available. So if you want to live in a suite, you need to register with a group. An individual cannot pick into a suite. So for sophomores, it is highly encouraged for you to form an even numbered group for selection. So again, form an even number group for selection. Now I'm going to pass things over to Justin to take you through the roles for registration.
Hey everyone. So first, take a screenshot, take a photo of this, because this is a really important timeline for you all to remember and understand. This is just kind of a breakdown of the period of room selection from registration to after you have an assignment and your appointment has passed. Essentially, who's responsible for what? So first of all, everyone is responsible for declaring their intent. So even if your group leader declares their intent, you still have to do yours individually. If you don't do it, you may risk losing your guaranteed housing. So please make sure everyone that the first thing you do is fill out the application and declare your intent before joining a group or creating one. The group leader is the one who creates and verifies the group. They're the one that creates the group name, shares the password with the group members so that everyone can join and then verify. Whereas the group member After you declare your intent, you just need to join the group, and then the group leader will verify the group after that. Before the appointment, everyone needs to make a plan, and we'll talk about this in more detail in a little bit, but make sure that you are all on the same page about the plan. During your appointment, the group leader is the only one that selects the room. The group members cannot go into the portal to select the room. It is the responsibility of the group leader. After the appointment, every person needs to sign the occupancy agreement. If you do not sign the occupancy agreement by the deadline, you do risk losing your fall housing. So make sure that as soon as you're able to, you complete all of these steps so that you can have a great summer and look forward to the next year. Now, why do we talk about group leaders? We talk about group leaders because they are very important. You do need to be thoughtful about who you pick. As we said, the group leader assigns each member to the room during selection. They are the ones declaring who will be roommates with which person in which room in which building. So what we have heard from students in the surveys, and we do read your survey responses, it helps us out a lot. And what y'all have shared last year is that your peers have recommended choosing a group leader that is organized, responsible, and a good communicator. This way, everyone can feel comfortable with the process and understand that when the appointment comes, what the group leader is doing, so you can all be excited about the next year. So what does this look like in the portal? Well, like previous applications that you filled out, we have a couple pages, such as personal and contact details that you'll need to fill out, your dining plan selection, again, just like your first year application, along with a dining promotion. This is the image on the screen is where you select your participation in room selection. So this is where you're basically saying you want to participate in room selection, or if you're going to not participate because you're studying abroad or taking a leave of some kind. Again, it's important that everybody declares their intent. So if you're participating in room selection, you just click on the first option and hit save and continue. When in doubt in the application, click Save and Continue. You can always go back and change a dining plan, leave a group to join another group, any of those things. But if you do not continue to the final stage, you do risk not completing the application. So let's say you want to form a group. And as we said before, we do highly recommend this for rising sophomores. This is what the group formation page looks like in the portal. And this is where you're going to go to, say, on the bottom left, click Create Group. And on there, you'll create the group name and password to share with your group members. Again, it's important that group names are appropriate. If we find any names that aren't appropriate, we do reserve the right to reach out to the group to request that the name be changed. We always want to be respectful of our colleagues and make sure that we're creating a good environment for everyone. If you're going to be a group member and your leader has already created the group, then you're just going to click the button in the bottom left that says Join Group, enter the name and password, and then the group leader will verify it once every member has joined. Now I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Menley to talk about getting you to your appointment.
Thanks so much, Justin. Hey, everyone. Now we're going to talk about point values, lottery numbers, and appointment times, and how they're all connected. These are really important concepts for room selection. So to start, everyone gets a point value, and point values are based on your seniority. So there's nothing that you can do to influence that. As rising sophomores, you will get a 20-point value, and that'll impact the range in which your lottery numbers will come from. A helpful way to think about this for anyone who's familiar with sports, think about this as the round in which you'll select. So as you can see here, big lines on campus, the seniors, they'll get a 40-point value. In other words, they'll get all of those first round picks, so to speak. So next, we'll talk about how these point values and lottery numbers connect. As you can see, the closer you are to number one, the earlier you'll be able to select. So think about that again as the most valuable pick in the lottery. Or in this case, for you all as rising sophomores, the number that you should be focused on is 4001. That's the best number in your round of selection. One important point we want to note that Justin just mentioned about when you form groups, we'll tell you about how forming a group will impact your point values. In this example here, you'll see that we have a mix, what we call the mixed group, and a group of sophomores. So group point value is the average of the members' point value. So in this case, we have a rising junior and a rising sophomore who decided to pair up and form a rising junior and rising sophomore mixed group. So their point value is 25, and you can see where their lottery number range will fall. And on the other side, we see 4 rising sophomores who got together, formed a group, and their rising sophomore group point value is 20. and we see where their number range is going to be. So for the most part, this is pretty intuitive. So if you get together with a group, do the average of the individual point values of the people in your group. Now, let's talk about how these point values and lottery numbers get converted into appointment times. Your appointment time is going to be when you'll be able to select. At that point, only the group leader will be able to log in to choose the rooms for everyone. So it's going to be really important to make sure that you have conversations with your group leader and you trust that group leader. That's going to be the most important part of this stage for you all. And your appointment times will be posted on March 27th. And then the selection, the online room selection, will start April 1 and continue through April 24th, or when the inventory is exhausted. And on the daily, appointment times will begin at 8 a.m. and the last appointment time will start before 6 p.m. And there will be no appointments on weekends or holidays. Now, as a summary, too long, didn't read. Your point value will influence your lottery number. Your lottery number will determine your appointment time. And the higher the point value, better the lottery number. Your better lottery number will allow you to pick a bit sooner. Okay, now I'll hand it over to Lorena to talk about some pre-selection planning.
Thank you, Manley. So how do we suggest that you prepare for your appointment? First, you should explore our residences. We have meticulously reviewed the building pages in our Columbia Housing website to make sure all of the information is up to date for you to review. As a rising sophomore, it is important for you to be in an even-numbered group. Being part of a group requires to designate a group leader that will have to create and verify the group. We just want to remind you again that group leaders will be the ones assigning beds to all the members of the group. So choose the group leader wisely. After appointment times are posted, a group leader may find that they will not be available during their appointment time. So when this happens, the group leader can designate another member of the team to be the group leader and make sure to verify the group. We also suggest you prepare multiple housing options and that you follow the room selection process as it gets closer to your appointment time. This will allow you to know what options are available that meet your goals as best as possible. Also, we have created a demo mode for selection in the portal, and Justin will go through it a little bit later in the presentation. Lastly, please have those hard conversations now. What will the leader do if the only beds available are in different buildings? Which group members will go into which building? So have those conversations now so the leader knows what to do when it's time to select. Because this process can be a bit complicated, especially if you're doing it for the first time, we have another info session for group strategy and selection info session that would help us go through and do a deep dive into group sizes, scenarios, you can ask additional questions and we can help you navigate through this process. Also, we want to remind you that some of our buildings that appear as suites on floor plans, but are not suites in room selection, and therefore they do not have to be filled. And those are Carlton Arms and 600 West 130. Now I'm gonna pass it to Justin to review how the process works on the housing portal.
Yeah, so when it's time to select your room, it's very important that you log in during your appointment. And if you're in a group, that needs to be the group leader. If a group member logs into the portal during their time slot, unfortunately, they will not be able to select. It does have to be the group leader. Once they're in, they're able to see all of the available spaces that we have in our portfolio. So you may see spaces that are larger than your group size. You will see spaces that are smaller than your group size. Just remember that in order to select into a suite or into a double, you have to be able to fill all the bed spaces. You will then select your room and assign the beds to each group member as well as yourself. And then everyone needs to log in and sign the occupancy agreement. It's a very simple process, but of course we're going to go through it step by step together. Now, the big news this year, and there needs to be like lasers and everything for it, is that we have created what we're calling our portal demo mode. It's going to be open from March 14th to 24th. And what this is it mimics the selection process and experience. It will provide access for group leaders and individuals so that everyone can go in and practice selecting rooms and making assignments. This will mirror the experience you will have in the portal, and we're very excited to do this because we just want to remove any confusion or questions about how the process works. So you can do this as many times as you'd like, review the options, see what error messages you get in case you're not able to fill a suite, etc. But this will be available from the 14th to 24th for everyone. So now, what does it look like? When it is time for your appointment, you will go to the room selection registration summary page. And again, this is a page that has your lottery number. It'll have your appointment time there. And all you'll do is hit save and continue to move into the portal. If you try to access it before, it will not allow you to proceed. You do have to wait until it is exactly your time to go in. On the left-hand side of the screen, this is what the selection page looks like. On the left-hand side, you're able to filter by building, by room and suite style in case you have particular rooms that you're looking for, say an 8-person suite in Ruggles or some doubles in Broadway. You can filter it down so that you can get to the rooms that you're looking for pretty quickly. And then all you're going to do is hit book room. Now, once you've made all of your selections, you're then going to need to assign the room spaces to everyone. So on the left-hand side is the assign rooms page, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Every person in your group needs to have a bed, and every bed needs to be assigned to a specific person. So for everyone here, that's why it's very important that your group leader communicates, that you have faith in them, because they are making the determinations for the next academic year. Once you assign the rooms and confirm, you're going to land on the image on the right-hand side of the screen, which is room selection completed. If you do not see this screen, you have not completed the process. So again, selecting a bed isn't enough. You need to make sure you sign the occupancy agreement so that you do not risk losing your assignment for the fall. A pro tip for everyone, excuse me, I need to cough. Check the live viewer before your appointment to see what is available. The live viewer will be available on our website beginning Monday, March 31st, or I'm sorry, yeah, Monday, March 31st this year. So please make sure to utilize that. You can watch in real time as rooms are selected so that you can alter your options as you get closer to your appointment time. And finally, we just want to talk about the guaranteed assignment list. What it is it's an assignment list for students who are unable to select a room during room selection. This may happen because there may not be enough rooms, or it may just be something where students can no longer fill the suites that are available. But what's important here is that you are guaranteed housing and you will receive an assignment over the summer, which is typically by late July. So whenever we open the guaranteed assignment list, all you have to do is log in and confirm your building preferences so that we can try to match you up with what rooms we have available. But again, just to stress, you are guaranteed housing and you will have an assignment over the summer if you are on the guaranteed assignment list. Now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Menley so he can talk about the data.
Thank you, Justin. So the data is really important here because we want to stress that this is not to be used in a predictive manner. It's an analysis based on how folks selected last year. And a really important caveat about this data is that it does not include Hartley, because Hartley will not be available in room selection for the next couple of years due to construction. Now, tastes and preferences matter. So for anyone out there who's studying econ, you'll know what that means. It means it's going to vary. But based on how folks picked last year, this is what happened. So for the class last year, the top 5 buildings they selected into are going to be McBain, Carleton, Shapiro, 647. What does this really mean? It means that living in Columbia as a sophomore means living in a double. Really, really important. Now, how folks selected into these buildings, most people, as you can see from that big slice of the pie that's green, they were in even numbered groups. Some people decided to go in as an individual, 11%, which is important. We'll talk about that in a second. And then some folks decided in odd number groups. And the chances that people can get a single is going to be about 3%. So again, it is highly unlikely as a sophomore you will have a single. Can't stress that enough. So it's really, really important to focus on who you want to live with. Oh, why this matters. It's important to form an even number group to talk about that more. And now we'll talk about the selection strategies. that you should be considering as a sophomore. As I was previously saying, I think the best strategy for a sophomore is to consider who you want to live with, because it is highly unlikely that you'll get a single. So in this case, we'll talk about the luckiest people at Columbia, the luckiest sophomores, that is. This is the group of 6 people who happen to have the number 4001. So they were the first ones to select, and this is how they decided that they wanted to select in the sophomore round. They chose 2 singles in McBain, so one person got a single there, another one got a single on a different floor perhaps, and then they chose a double in Carlton and a double in 600. So the reason this is important is because they happen to have that randomly assigned 4001, but say they didn't. Say they had number 5000. And if they had one of the lower numbers or sort of the later number in the selection, then they would have been already partnered up with people they wanted to live with, when later on in room selection, the inventory is primarily corridor style doubles. Again, as a sophomore, just based on seniority, when you're going to pick, that is more than likely what will be available for you. The extremely, extremely small lucky percentage of you might be able to have a chance at a single, but again, it's a small chance. So hope for the best and just prepare to live in a double. All right, I'll go ahead and hand it over to John to talk about some things to keep in mind.
These are just some reminders regarding Hartley Hall, which will be closing, so will not be available for room selection. Our new building, which is exciting, 611 West 112th Street, will be opening. And then there will be construction continuing near Ween Hall, as well as 47 Claremont, which might mean some intermittent construction noise. And as you see, you can scan that QR code for some more information. Some other important housing dates for you to remember. The summer housing applications will be available on our housing portal starting February 12th. You must check out of your housing assignment by May 17th or 24 hours after your last final exam. And then finally, May 26th, for any students who are living on campus during summer session 1, you can check in starting May 26th for summer session 1. For more information and tips about room selection, please refer to our Columbia Housing website under Current Student. You can also follow us on Instagram at Columbia Housing for more FAQs, tips, date reminders, and more. Additionally, you can find useful videos showcasing some of our buildings, an overview of the room selection process, and more on our official YouTube channel, which is at Columbia Undergraduate Housing. And I'm going to pass it over back to Lorena.
Thank you, John, and everyone. Okay, so now that we went through the presentation, let's try this again and see how everybody feels now. Oh, it's not letting me launch. Let's see. Here. Okay, so 100% answered. There are a few that are still not good and really confused. I hope it's because you came in a little bit late into the presentation, but we will post it online early next week to make sure that you're able to review it again if you need to. But we are doing pretty good. I think you mainly understand, but you may still have some questions, and I can share the results so you can see. Really fun. Thank you everyone for the time. So now we can move to the Q&A. So we don't have as many students here as we had expected. So I think we should be able to answer your questions in this one room. We have members of RHLO who can share the residential experience. We also have some Columbia students that can help you can ask any student perspective questions about the process, and of course the housing staff that for any process specific questions. Thank you very much. So I'll stop sharing and please go ahead and we can answer any questions now.
I'll take one live since I was typing it up to start. Someone asked a question about groups and individuals having the same chance at lottery numbers. Because it's randomly generated, the answer to that is yes. If you go in as a group or an individual, between 4,001 and 5,000, you have the same chance to get a randomly generated lottery number within that span or within that round. So again, if you're going as an individual or a group, you have the same chance to get a randomly assigned lottery number. We don't recommend that though, because again, as a rising sophomore, most of the portfolio available at that time is going to be quarter style doubles. And when only quarter style doubles are available, you will need to fill both beds. As an individual, you cannot do that. So that means when all of the singles are out, you would have to go onto the guaranteed assignment list. So really important to consider that. Again, same chance to get a lottery number, but it does you no good if you can't use that lottery number.
I see another question here, and maybe James or Thomas from Rollo can help us answer, is that can we go and see rooms in person?
Yes, thank you. We're actually currently planning to host tours on Friday, March 7th from 3 to 5 p.m. We'll be touring a lot of the classic sophomore dorms, such as McBain, Carlton Arms, 47 Claremont, and others. So just look out for information on that. Barolo will be announcing our room tours very soon. Thank you.
See one about the best dorm building for a group who wants singles as a rising sophomore. I would love if one of the students participating could take that. Ahmed, Shelley, I see thoughts in your faces. Feel free.
I can take this question. I mean, to be honest, like I wouldn't say they're the best building, but quarter styles will offer you the most opportunity to get singles. Um, but once again, it really depends on your lottery number, which is randomly generated. So my best advice would be to have honest conversations about living in a double as a sophomore.
I also just want to give a little bit of hope to those who are worried about being single and not having a group. I applied with no group or anything, and my number was 4,023. So it's not completely over if you are like insecure or really worried. Just hold on to that hope really, really, really tightly.
Was that Thomas that said that? Thank you,
Yes.
Tom. Thank you so much, Thomas. What I heard was Thomas is extremely lucky. When you meet him, go play the lottery. So
So I think I'm also gonna rely on this question on either one of our students here. It says, what is it like sharing one bathroom with like 7 people in a suite or in a dorm like Claremont? Can anybody answer that?
I can take this one since I was in a 7-person suite in Claremont. I think the best thing to do is like we got lucky and half of the people in our suite wanted to shower in the morning and then half wanted to shower at night. So it worked out really well where it kind of like divided up like that. And then the one person like showered at random times during the day, which was great. But honestly, schedules work really good. We had like a whiteboard system. So whenever someone was in the shower, whoever wanted to shower next could put like their name on the whiteboard. And then we had that going in. Honestly, just talk it out in your housing group and then develop an order from there. But I would say it's definitely doable. It's a little tight sometimes, especially when everyone rushes to the bathroom in the morning. But this is like a good time to also have like conversations with your group about schedules and like who wants to do what. So on.
Thank you, Shelley. That's great. Justin, I think you're typing this answer, but I think it'll be good for everyone to hear it. Is that why would larger even number groups be better than smaller even number groups?
Yeah, I'll take that. So it really comes down to what's available at the time of selection. If you're in a larger group, you just have more options at your disposal. So, what I typed there is that if you're a 4-person group or a 6-person group, that's, that's great. You have options. You can select into doubles. You can select into some 4-person, 6-person suites. But let's say there are some 8-person suites or 7-person suites available at the time of your selection. You will not be able to select into them. And so that's why we always recommend having a larger group size, because then, the way juniors and seniors pick each year changes. And let's say that there are some more suites available that are larger in size, it just gives you the flexibility to be able to select into them.
Thanks, Justin. There was a really good one that I saw in here, and I said I would ask James or Thomas to answer this one live. Someone asked a great question. Do you have any advice for students without a housing group? So I think some of the students on here, maybe James or Thomas, could help answer that question. We know Thomas got lucky, but maybe you have advice on anyway finding friends to live with.
Yeah, I would recommend you have at least one other person because then you can fill a double and you won't get put onto the random list. As for reaching out to people, sometimes reaching out to people in some of your classes, especially like some of your core classes as a freshman, because those are classes of only freshmen, like in your Lit Hum, Froci, UW classes. I think those are great places. You can just ask random people like, hey, do you have a group? If not, just pair into twos and then you can fill a double. And that'd probably be my recommendation.
I think a good idea also could be to go back to the Instagram class of 2028 page. And if you really don't know anyone, that's okay. Maybe go through that and see if there's anyone that you have much interest. I know people usually have a biography where they describe their what they like and who they are. So that could also be an option.
For this question, I think I want to answer it, but then I'm also going to ask Manly to jump in for oh, Shelly's answering this one. Since we recommend to join an even number group, how can we fill an odd number suite in Claremont? Shelly, what were you going to say?
I can answer this live. I think what my group did, I wasn't the group leader, so I can't exactly provide like a 100% exact answer, but what they did was like they essentially just checked over and over to see if that suite in Claremont was still open. I think Claremont at the time was weird where they like called to check to see if the suite was open. I don't fully know, but I think if you are going to have an odd number group, just be prepared, like just in case a suite that perfectly matches your group isn't available, and then see how you would divide doubles from then on. I would say like the probability is not super high, but it's definitely doable. I would just say have a plan just in case like that 7-person suite doesn't work out and you guys have to divide into like 3 doubles and then one person gets like a random roommate. Just be prepared to have that conversation.
So I think what I want to add, I think in terms of context, I think it's a little risky to do to just go for the 7 with a 7-person group with the hopes to get that 7-person suite in Claremont. So I think it is just a risk, but it's also something that you need to speak as a group and decide if that is what you're willing to do as a group. I think this ties to how does the guaranteed assignment list happen? How does why do people end up in the guaranteed assignment list? So it very much depends on how seniors and juniors choose. So if they decide to go into, let's say, all seniors and juniors decide into corridor style buildings, let's say, and that leaves us a lot of suites available. And if sophomores do not have the right number of people that will fill the suites, then those would, you would not be able to choose into those suites, let's say. And then because you're not able to fill those suites, you will not be able to select during your appointment time. So that would potentially, a combination of many different factors is what does not allow students to select during their appointment time, and the reason why we have to open the guaranteed assignment list once the inventory is not available for people to select into.
Yeah, and just to clarify really quick, something that Shelley said in regards to getting a random roommate. One of the things that did change last year was that we do not open rooms, meaning that we don't open like blind doubles, for example, where you select one bed and a random person selects into the other one. So as of now, all students need to be able to fill both beds in a double. They need to be able to fill all beds in a suite. So I just wanted to clarify that because I did get a question about that.
I saw one question that's a pretty good one about having a mixed group and being able to pick singles ahead of everyone else. In this case, as sophomores, it's going to be very unlikely that that's a good strategy because there's one building that we saw based on data. We looked at a few years of data and we saw that McBain was basically going to all sophomores, except there were a few seniors or juniors that would kind of sneak into those singles because they picked ahead. So that building is specifically coded for just sophomores. So anyone with the number 4001 through 5000 will have the best chance at that and the only chance at living in that building. So if you do have a mixed point group, you may pick before all sophomores, but those singles in McBain will not be available for you.
Yeah, and I'll answer this question live. This question about, is your housing selection time restricted to your group or are other groups choosing at the same time? Um, it is for your group, meaning that if you get a selection time of, 12:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, you have a window where you're the only ones going in there to select. Now, that doesn't mean that you can only select during that 6-minute window, but that's the window that your group is designated to go in and make a selection. So if for some reason your group takes a little bit longer, you need another minute or two, the system's not going to kick you out. But it is that time frame before the next group goes in and then is able to start selecting. So if your group leader forgets to go into the portal and make a selection and a couple hours have passed, then a lot of groups have chosen into rooms that your group could have selected into.
I was typing one, but I guess I can answer it live. Georgia asked a good question about being recommended to join an even group. How can you fill the odd number group suites in Claremont? I think folks have touched on this before, but again, it'll take a bit of getting lucky because you have to fulfill the requirements of the group. Say you have a group of 8 and you want a 7-person suite, 7 people can go into that suite. That other one person will need to be able to go into a single. So you'd have to have a really great number. That also assumes that it would be available by the time you picked. Again, as a sophomore, I think folks are just prepared to live in a quarter style double because that's mostly where most people will end up.
I can go ahead and answer the question about RAs getting off the wait list. So I applied to be an RA my sophomore year and my junior year, and I ended up on the wait list both years. I can tell you with confidence that getting off the wait list is more random than your lottery number as an RA. And so what I would say is assume that you won't get an offer and join a housing group. So that way you at least have a housing assignment. If you do end up getting off the wait list, then they'll pull you into your RA assignment, and that will be taken care of by Res Life. But the recommendation here would be to join a housing group, so that way you don't risk losing your housing. And then I also saw a question about the 17th floor Shapiro. I don't know if that's still here, but that is an RHD space or like a private suite, not for students.
Yeah, it's a professor in residence.
I can also add to the RA question real quick. I was a former RA, and I got off the wait list. And when it happened, it was a week before we were supposed to move in, which was in August. So the housing assignment that I already had obviously went into limbo, and then I took the RA position. So I would definitely second Ahmed on that. Like, don't wait on the wait list to go through. That's like completely dependent on current RAs if they choose to, for whatever reason, leave their position. That would open up a position for you to take over. So that, like he said, is very random. It can happen like really at any time. So yeah, definitely go through your group and do what you got to do. And if the RA situation works out, God willing, then obviously do it. But yeah, don't put all your eggs in that basket.
Ahmed, could you take the Carlton Arms question live, please? I think that's an important one. You live there, right?
Absolutely. So I lived in Carlton Arms my sophomore year. So just breaking down the answers in order. So living experience in Carlton Arms definitely felt like living in New York, like detached from campus. Right next to Riverside Park, absolutely. Great opportunity to go for walks in the morning. It also when it snowed quite a few times, and so it was great to go sledding, have snowball fights with friends. Um, did you feel safe walking home late at night? I absolutely did. VIA is definitely a great resource. Also, it was, you could take the train from 110 to 116 if you really wanted to, if it's raining, if you don't feel like walking. It's definitely also an option. But VIA was definitely a great resource. And the Columbia Shuttle is also a great resource that also runs very close to Colton Arms, and you can take that straight to campus or even to Manhattanville or the medical campus as well. So definitely great living experience. Highly recommend. Some great rooms in Carlton Arms. Very spacious rooms, I might add, in Carlton Arms. And the benefit is you also get a lounge and a kitchen in each of the suites. But you don't need to fill the suite. So definitely do take a look at Carlton Arms. Highly recommend.
How about this one? Thank you, by the way, thank you and for our students here with their experience. And also, like, let's see about this one. Would you recommend a junior pull up sophomore friends in housing? What is a sophomore junior housing like? I think it depends. I think it really depends on the group there. Juniors have to be willing to understand that they will have to wait to choose. After all, junior groups choose first. So I think it's just, it's up. If you have friends that are rising juniors and they're willing to take you in for a group, I think they just have to understand that they'll have to wait to pick and that the options might be limited at that time. But the groups do it, so it's there as an option.
Yeah, and just to speak to that too, because we've gotten a couple questions about, juniors potentially selecting into McBain. If you're in a mixed point group of juniors and sophomores and you want to go into McBain, one, the group leader has to be a rising sophomore. Juniors are not able to select into McBain. They are not able to see McBain. And so if you leave the group leader of your mixed point group as a junior, then they will not be able to assign you to a room in McBain. The second thing is that juniors cannot be assigned a room in McBain. Only rising sophomores are able to be assigned a room in McBain. So just one of those things where I want to make it really clear for everyone that a rising junior cannot be assigned a room in McBain. So even if they see that singles are available, you're in a mixed point group, that can only go to a rising sophomore.
Can you also touch on that question you just answered, Justin, about, I think someone asked specifically if you have 4001 or the first pick in the sophomore class, your chances of getting a single.
Yeah, I mean, your chances are definitely better than someone who might have a lottery number of 4,500. But like we talked about earlier, it depends on how students select every year, and that's students as a whole, right? We saw more rising sophomores select into Broadway, for example, select into Shapiro, for example, than the year before. And that's just because of how the rising seniors and then the rising juniors picked. So it may be something where there may be more singles available, there may be fewer singles available, but it's about how the overall student population picks their room for the next academic year. And again, use the live viewer. It's available 24/7 starting March 31st. And so you can watch that again to help inform your group leader, yourself as an individual if you choose to go in as one, though we don't recommend it, so that you can understand what options are available to then make that experience better for you.
Lorena, do you mind if I just add something here? We've seen a lot of questions about, into what buildings can sophomores select and what's my likelihood of ending up in a certain building. We do share all of our room selection data from last year is available on our website. So if you were to, for example, go to the Broadway Hall page, you could see what % of the building was actually sophomores and whether or not they were living in singles or in doubles. So it's a really good resource if you're not sure where you think you might have a chance to select. You can see how selection shook out last year. It's just important to remember what Justin just said, which is preferences change every year. We can only tell you what happened last year. We can't tell you what's going to happen moving forward. But if you want to see where some sophomores have picked in the past year, the website is a really good place to see that. And we do actually tag our building directory by typical residence. So you can even sort to see buildings that are mostly sophomores, buildings that have some sophomores, buildings that are only sophomores, which in this case is McBain. So if you're not sure where to start, that's a really good place.
I would just tag on to what Katie said, and I saw somebody else ask about the shaft in the chat. The shaft is also a resource in addition to the housing website. The housing team actually provides them with some of the data that they use. But as everybody has already said, you know, that you know, be careful. It's not 100% accurate. It's based on like last year's preferences. And they have not yet updated their the website with the 2024 data. So just be aware of that. They're in the process of doing that now.
Yeah, and I'll take the next one. We've had a couple students ask about our new building, 611. It's very exciting. We're very excited to get the building open and to welcome students to it. At the same time, it's an active construction zone. It is still being worked on. We got a question earlier about floor plans, so I'll speak to that as well. We are, we're hoping to get the floor plans out soon. And of course, once we have them, we'll share them with everyone. But like I said, it's an active construction zone. They're still working on it. So we are working to make as much information available as possible. It's just that we're also going through the process of building and opening a new location in our portfolio. So as soon as we have it, we'll be sure to share it with everyone.
It's going to be really nice though. It's going to be nice and new, and it has individual heating and cooling units in each of the rooms.
Someone just asked a really good question about one of the slides that was up there. It looks like a suite, but it's not a suite. For folks that want to live in 600, remember that's one of the few places where physically it looks like a suite, but in terms of how the community is treated, it's treated like a corridor style building. That's 600 West 113, and that's also Carlton Arms. And what that really means is you don't need to fill the entire quote unquote suite. You can fill the individual spaces within, and also the expectations of privacy. RAs will do rounds and things like that. So just remember that those places may physically look like a suite when you look at the building pages, but they're not treated as such. You should consider them more like a corridor style building.
Let me answer this one question about how does religion accommodation work. So there's no formal process for a religious accommodation. Typically, how students have managed this is they form the group and that best fits their goals, right? If that is a religious situation, then they would do that, and they would select based on what would work best for the group. So that there's no formal process for a religious accommodation, but typically that's how students have managed this in previous years. All right, I think we hit all and we answered all of the questions, 94 of them all together. I want to say thank you very much to the students that work for housing, the RHLO students that joined us today, our communications team, the housing team that's also here. We really, really appreciate everyone that participated, and we hope that this was informative and that you'll be able to select and make it easy for you. Okay, if you have any questions about group selections, we'll have another info session on the 28th of February, and we look forward to answering more questions then. All right, have a wonderful weekend, y'all. Take care.
Good luck, everyone.
Bye.